Good morning, KOTA territory. Welcome back to another Between the Lines book club. We're going to be talking about our July pick here. We're in a little bit of a different spot today because it'll be easier for us to monitor everyone's comments from our little station here rather than from in the studio having to listen to it through my ear because I'm not very good at that. But this month we read Cassandra Clare's Swordcatcher. And I really would like to apologize about the state of my book before we get started. It did take quite the tumble into the lake when I was home for the 4th of July. So, what did you think of this book, going into it? Because you've read this before.
Yes, so this was a reread for me. I will read the second book. However, the second half of this first book really disappointed me. I loved the beginning. I was really excited to read it. Had a lot of potential, and then I felt like all that potential fell flat.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think the first half of this book, I was so invested in the sort of Prosper Beck situation debt thing, and then it kind of just, I feel like, spiraled into, like, not nothing, but not as climax as I was hoping. But I also, this was the first time I read it, and I really liked it. Overall, before we get into the nitty-gritty, where do you think you would rate this on your 5-star scale?
No more than a 3.5.
I was going to say I would give it, a 3.75, so I rounded up on my Goodreads, but 3.75 because I had a fun time. I had fun. I liked the characters. I liked Kel. I liked Lynn. I liked their vibes. Connor was pissing me off, but we'll get into that in a minute because he's someone that we need to discuss. I wanted to talk first, I guess, about writing style, since that's typically how we start these. For you, what worked and what didn't?
I would say what worked was the world building. I liked how vibrant everything felt. I actually felt like it was in the world. The city felt busy. All the descriptions gave a lot of life to everything that was going on. I didn't like the fact that this was really pushed as Cassandra Clare's first adult novel, and it was adult characters, but the writing felt very YA, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I felt like some of the language choices, some of the political descriptions were geared towards a younger audience, which I was a bit surprised about because I was excited for this being more of an adult novel.
Yeah.
And stepping away from YA, but the writing didn't deliver on that aspect for me.
I think I would agree. I think the way that I was thinking about it is this, I wouldn't necessarily consider the level of difficulty with the text to be adult at all. I agree. It completely felt like a YA reading experience, but with adult themes, which I think is something interesting when you get into the topic of romantasy, book talky trends. I don't know if any of you guys watching at home are book talk people, but I'll get on there every once in a while and I'll find these, adult books that have adult content in them, and they just, the reading experience doesn't feel like I'm reading truly a reading level as an adult. I don't know if that's the right way to put things, but
I completely agree with you, and I think this book sort of fell victim to that.
Yeah, I think it did, but the thing is, I like Cassandra Clare's YA writing style, and I think that reading this, going into it, being like, oh, I know her, she does YA, helped me kind of just gloss over that a little bit more.
I agree. I think when I put it out of my mind, the way the book was marketed and promoted and described, didn't have an issue with the writing style at all. But the moment I started to consider, wait a minute, this is supposed to be this, it's supposed to be that, then I started to feel like, oh, well, it didn't deliver, it's lacking.
Yeah. No, I can completely understand that. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the dual POV in this. I sometimes struggle with a dual POV, but I didn't think that this one was done poorly. I think they chose, she chose good spots to switch who we're dealing with.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. I like dual POV. I don't like when there's, 6 different points of view.
It's too many to keep track of.
Right. I love 2, and I like having both sides of the story, and I like feeling like as the reader, I'm in on things that the other characters aren't. It's a fun experience. I just did not really love Lynn and her point of view. I struggled a bit with that, mostly because I felt like every time I was reading stuff from her, I was getting lectured, like as the reader. And that was really annoying to kind of try to get through, to move past, because she's not a bad character.
Yeah. She definitely is
cool
difficult.
Stuff.
I would have to agree with that there. That is a... Yeah, I can get behind the lecturing thing, especially when it came to, like, her being a physician thing. Also, I felt like was really... You know, obviously I get it. Like, Cassandra Clare wanted to kind of emphasize this point that because she was a girl, it was a lot harder. She had to work a lot harder. People doubted her, whatever. And I think that that's important, but I think sometimes the way it came off when you're reading from Lynn's perspective was a little lectury.
Yeah, and I think the main problem I have with that is not having a character that acts like that or talks like that. But it didn't come across as that being Lynn's personality. It came across as Cassandra Clare doesn't think maybe we're smart enough to pick up on the things she wants us to pick up on. So in a way, sometimes reading it, it felt a little insulting of like, no, I already got that. I already understand that. That was already made clear.
Especially, I feel like she emphasized that thing with the library and the books, like, a lot in Lynn's perspective, because you start off your first original thing with Lynn and Miriam, right, being, like, in this bookshop, not able to buy a book.
Right.
And then she has to ask to go in the library later, and it just is this common theme where they're like, yeah, they don't think I should have a book because I'm a woman, and it's... Obviously, that's wrong, and, like, it's important to emphasize that, but the repeating of the same sort of message over and over and over again. Like, instead of being like, oh, I asked and he said no because you're a woman, it could have been like, oh, I asked and he said no. Because we have the context already from prior in the book. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does, and I think one of the issues that I have with this that also comes up in other areas of the story is that there are better ways, in my opinion, that I've read, that I've seen in books, to show the exact same things Cassandra Clare wanted to show us. So she wants to show us that there's prejudice in this world, that, you know, it's difficult for women to have certain rights or do certain things. It's difficult for the community that Lynn comes from to have access to the wider world or the wider community. And there are, like, a million ways you could tell me that, you could show me that, without it just being the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah, I did kind of feel like Lynn's perspective sometimes got repetitive. And I think, honestly, you could even really say the same for Kel, just because a lot of his story was this, like, it's supposed to be this inner turmoil about, oh, do I want to be the sword catcher? Is that what I want out of my life? And I think it's interesting to compare and contrast the two, because Kel's didn't bother me as much because it felt much more like his personality than Lynn's did.
Yes. I actually kind of liked Kel and his perspective and the way he was written, and I agree with you. It felt like that was his personality. It felt like that's just who he is as a character. Like, if he wasn't being observed in a book, he'd still act like that or talk like that or do those things. So I did like Kel. And it's important to me to note that he came across as competent. Because there are some times where I feel like Lynn, I'm told as the reader she's very smart. I'm told that she's capable of all these great things, that she does all these great things, but I never feel like I was shown how smart she is or how capable she is. And so it sounds kind of disappointing, but Kel stood out because I felt like I was shown he was competent time and time again.
Yeah, you know, I think I can agree with that, but I'm trying to think. I think if we had had a little more context of Lynn as a physician before she got that, like, magic stone that was going to help her with her healing stuff, I think it would have emphasized the fact that she is, like, this smart and capable person. But because right at the beginning of her story, she immediately gets that stone, it's hard for us to then contextualize, oh, she was smart and good at being a physician before she got this magical item. And that was another thing I wanted to talk about. What did you think about the whole magic thing happening here of, like, oh, it's not really allowed, but it is, but it isn't, but it is?
I had mixed feelings, and I don't want to sound too harsh on the book because I liked the book and I thought the book was fun. I thought the book felt exciting to read, and I was really engaged with the book. But the magic fell flat at the halfway point. At the beginning, it was exciting. Learning about it was exciting. But then the more I learned about it, the less I cared about it.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things with the world building that I think I struggled with a little bit. I really enjoyed the magic system and how things, we'd get these little snippets of the quotes from other historical texts in this society. I always think that's fun, but I struggled a bit with magic isn't really allowed, but there's certain types of magic that are, like the whatever it is that Lynn and the Ashkar do.
Yes.
In the story, technically, whatever that is classified as is allowed. I also think it's interesting because she's doing these illegal magic things, but it doesn't necessarily feel super high stakes to me. I felt like the high stakes thing that I was more concerned about was Connor and Kel and the whole political intrigue of the royal family and all the noble people up on the hill. I thought that was a little bit more exciting than
I think you're spot on. The magic didn't feel risky. It didn't feel like, ooh, this is a big thing. This is an important thing. At some parts, it almost felt like a footnote. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, if that's what Cassandra Clare intended, for it to just sort of be a vehicle to help move along the plot, that's fine. But I would say for people who are looking for big magic, high stakes magic, risky magic, they're not going to find it here.
Yeah. I will say, though, the thing that I did really like the way that, the whole sword catcher concept was executed. I think that was done really well. And I thought it was particularly interesting at the beginning when we're, the very beginning of Kel's story where he's put into this situation and told, okay, you're going to pretend to be the prince. And then they decide that they're going to keep him as the sword catcher. I thought it was interesting that they mentioned, people who really know you will be able to see right through it, but no one on the hill cares. No one's looking that closely. And I thought that was interesting then when you have these interactions later on with, what was her name? Antoinette?
Yes.
Antoinette, when you're having these interactions with Antoinette later on, where he's Connor, but she's still not seeing it even though they grew up together, and Kel has such, a crush on her.
Right. I think if that was the intention, it's very clever in the sense of it shows us that even the people who know them as two separate individuals, who care about them as two separate individuals, don't really care enough to look further, to go further, to think a bit more. And it kind of demonstrates Connor's, the crown prince. So people aren't even invested enough in him outside of his position or his power or what he can do for them to really look and care. So I did like that, and I thought the premise itself was pretty unique. I haven't
seen anything like that before.
With that, and I thought that was a really cool principle, and I liked the dichotomy it created between Kel and Connor of we were raised together, we're friends, we care about each other, we trust each other, but at the end of the day, Kel knows, well, I'm here to die so you don't die. And everything I do is about you and following you and copying you and looking like you, and not having that sense of freedom that builds the resentment that affects their friendship.
And I think it's also interesting, getting into the Kel-Connor dynamic, because Connor, again, like I said, he was pissing me off. But it's you have, for my annoyance, I guess, with Connor was you have this person who's dedicating their entire existence, basically, to protecting you and standing by you and being with you. And then you're just going to go around, keeping all these secrets and not telling anyone anything and being really annoying and frustrating. And obviously that's part of why Kel starts to have these feelings of, oh, is this really what I want to do? Am I really, loyal to Connor? That sort of thing. And I thought that was interesting, especially when you bring in, the Ragpicker King and Prosper Beck and all these kind of criminal people who are trying to take advantage of Kel and Connor's relationship.
Yeah, another part of that annoyed me just a smidge was how often that them being doubles or looking alike or taking each other's places is used to make something happen. And it's like an ongoing thing of one of them is supposed to be somewhere and the other one's supposed to be somewhere else, and they both look alike, and then people mistake them. There were like 3 main instances in which that happens to Kel being in Connor's place. And by the second time, I was like, oh, we've seen this, we've done this, we've been there, we already know what's happening, and we already know what's going to follow through with that.
Yeah.
So I wish that wasn't used as often, or if it was used, making it more high stakes.
Yeah.
More pressure situation rather than, ooh, someone slips a secret here or makes a request here. And
Yeah, I did think those were interesting instances. I almost wish that they kind of not expose themselves, but I kind of wish that they, expose themselves and that final sort of thing before the big attack at the end, the climactic moment of like, I forget what group of people were coming after them, and I think it was rebels who didn't really like the whole crown prince and the princess situation. Like when they were sitting at the table and Kel is being so nice to the princess, and the her bodyguard, I forget her name already, but she was like, why are you being so nice to her? That's so not like you. And Kel's like, because in his own head is like, well, because she's like me, like she is a child with no choice in this, like she doesn't deserve to be treated this way. And he knows that Connor wouldn't do it, but he kind of puts himself into that situation. I don't know. I kind of wish that there had been like a moment there of like,
yes.
Oh, this happened. They know, but then it just then chaos erupted.
I think that really summarizes how I feel about the second half of the book. Because like I said, I was really excited, and I felt like it was a good book, and it felt immersive, and I liked the characters. I just feel like once we hit the halfway point, the characters didn't develop anymore. The plot didn't, outside of the big ending, there was nothing. From like 50% to like the last 2%, I felt like nothing happened. I felt like the characters didn't grow or change.
Yes, and the romance subplot in this was so confusing to me. I could not, and the issue is maybe my own self, but I could not picture Lynn and the prince having this moment like they did at all. They had no chemistry. I know that I have a feeling she was trying to do that enemies to lovers thing that is really popular in high fantasy magical-y books like this. But honestly, if I would have seen Lynn with anyone, I would have rather seen her with Kel. You know, I feel like their positions make a little more sense together than Connor and Lynn, and I didn't understand their chemistry at all.
I didn't either, and I went into this book after reading the blurb on the back and maybe the first few chapters, assuming it was going to be Lynn and Kel. Because, yes, it's a bit tropey, but it makes sense.
If you're getting two perspectives, you should be getting the romance people's perspective.
It makes sense. But I don't feel like there was any actual written chemistry for Lynn and Connor, and I also don't feel like we were given any reasoning to why, out of nowhere, Connor's suddenly like, oh yeah, she's the one. This is it for me. I like this one. It's like, why? You haven't told us. You haven't shown us. You haven't given us any backstory or deep reasoning or anything. And I just felt like the romance fell flat. And which for romantasy is half the equation.
Is that what this is marketed again? Because I went into this like fully. You and Umberto both told me you have to read this book, and I was like, okay, let's make it a book club pick. I went into this not knowing anything about the romantasy. Was it marketed that way?
Yes.
Oh gosh. I would not market this. An
adult romantasy, which I prefer a much lighter romance subplot. Like I don't want that to be the focus of the book, but I want it to make sense, and also I want it to serve a purpose. Well, and it didn't. Yeah. It didn't serve a purpose.
I think one of my main things when it comes to romantasy and the romance aspect of it is, again, I don't want it to take over the plot because I have issues with how things like Fourth Wing and that whole series have been handled. But in this one, you have to have like a little bit like, oh, their fingers brushed, and now there's yearning, and they like, why do I like, you know, you got to have a little bit of that, like that emotional thing, especially if you're going to do the enemies to lovers. And I feel like Lynn was kind of like, yeah, he doesn't like me, but like, I guess he's cute.
Yeah, I thought that was weird, and I didn't know if maybe
I thought
just
maybe I
wasn't
was
paying
dumb.
attention. Yeah, like maybe something I did on my end is making this not work. But she seems so indifferent towards him that there was no way that I would find that believable or find any tension in it at all. It's like, yes, there's the will they, won't they, does she, does he. But if she doesn't care, why do I care?
Well, especially because I feel like most of their interactions were under this like professionalism pretense of her being a physician and first coming in to heal Kel and then coming in to heal Connor. And it's just kind of jarring to have someone go from this like professional-ish relationship where it's like, we know each other because I am helping care for you and like providing this service, I guess. And then it's like, oh, but actually we're in love, and like, you know, like it just didn't feel like that.
Yeah, honestly, in true Cassandra Clare fashion, I was waiting for someone to reveal someone else was their sibling, to be honest. It's just one of those things where it didn't make any sense unless you were setting up something else. Like, having them together didn't make sense. There was no tension, there was no build-up, there was nothing convincing me. And so when I was reading it, I was like, oh, she's getting at something. She's using this as a vehicle to get somewhere else in the plot or to create a new conflict. And then we didn't get that. So I was sort of, I think if this book was 200 pages and it was put with the second book, it'd be a great fantasy volume.
Yes.
But I think it was really bold making this, like, what, 600-700 pages?
I think it's like 600 and something.
And having half
604.
the book. Yeah, having half the book not really move the plot.
Yeah, you know, I kind of agree with that. Another thing that I think was good about the book was I liked that she tried to get into some of these more complex issues. Like, I do appreciate that she tried to get into the whole, like, prejudice thing of this, you know, society, and I liked the politics a lot. Like, I thought that the council and the board of 12 was really interesting. I just wish that there was more of that and less of the, like, kind of fluffy nothing that happened.
Yeah, I think if I took out all the parts I have complaints with, it would be a good book, but it would make the story a lot faster paced. We'd get a lot more out of it, and I think the actions that are taken would be way more meaningful. She really could have cut out half this book, and it probably would have been a 4.5 star read for me.
Oh, yeah.
Because the things I liked, she did well. I liked the politics. I liked that commentary. I liked the unique sort of political setup.
I liked
some stuff
Connor
I
and
seen
Kel's
before.
relationship a lot.
Yep,
I liked
that.
I even liked Lynn's relationship with Miriam a lot. I liked that comment that they made about, like, you're treating her more like your patient than your friend.
Right.
Like, I thought that was an interesting aspect and avenue to take with their relationship, and so I'm glad that she did that. It's just, you're right, there was, like, kind of a lot of, like, now we're doing this and going to this dinner, and then Kel and Connor are going to keep secrets from each other and not communicate, which is my least favorite trope. I hate miscommunication.
Yes.
It's so frustrating, and I know it's the point to be frustrating, but it was driving me nuts.
I think miscommunication is just a really easy way to build tension, and as a reader who does judge books pretty harshly, I feel like it's a lazy way to build tension. Like, you can do more. You can make me feel frustrated. You can make me annoyed at the characters, have that real emotion in other ways.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Honestly, I would have still been annoyed with Connor, even if there wasn't this whole miscommunication debacle between him and Kel, because I think it would make more sense for them as people and as characters to be constantly talking to each other about stuff, especially when they have such a close and unique relationship with this whole sword catcher dynamic. because Connor obviously is going to have resentment to feeling like babied and coddled, and Kel is going to have resentment towards, I'm taking on so much danger for you.
Right.
And that would be a good tension builder, and it was a good tension builder. So we didn't need to have, oh, and then Connor left me a note and he wasn't going to come to the welcome party. Like, you know.
Yeah, I think some of these things came from playing into tropes too much. You can have that tension. I did like the issue of Kel wanting to know about freedom, what's really his own choice, and, you know, the whole idea of, well, all I do is copy you, who am I, what's my personality. I really liked that tension. I thought that was fantastic, and in the dichotomy between them was engaging. But then she kept leaning into it, and leaning into it, and leaning into it. And that's how I feel about a lot of the things of, oh, having a little romance is fun, but she kept leaning into it, and leaning into it.
Yeah.
Having issues with people mistaking which one's Kel and which one's Connor is interesting. Then it just keeps going.
Happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I think in the second book, and this is maybe something that I wish Umberto was here today, because I would bring him over here and ask him about it, because he was the one who told me that apparently the first book sets up a lot of things for the second book, and he said that the second book is better. So I'm wondering if maybe if I picked that up and read it, if it would have the same issues, or if it would start to make sense and it feels like they were putting all these things in for a reason. Like, I'm just wondering if maybe because this is the first in the series, it's hard, because there are certain things in most first books of a series that I'm like, we get it, but then it becomes important later on and you need to know. So
I am hopeful for the second book, and I will read it. I just think overall, with how the first book treated the reader, if that makes sense. Once again, it felt like Cassandra Clare was like, well, you can't figure this out on your own. You won't understand this. You won't get this. I really got to, like, make
Drill
big
it in.
signs.
Yeah.
And I hope that that doesn't carry through the second book, because if it does, honestly, I don't know if I'll be able to finish it.
Yeah, I can't blame you. I think it's something that maybe I would need to read if I was in more of a fluffy kind of mood. I've noticed that in the fantasy genre, and this is maybe my own opinion, but recently there's been a lot more of the fluffier, kind of cozier, you know, not a lot happening, but like relationships and friendships kind of things. And I think that sometimes this book felt a little bit more like it was about like friendship stuff and like coming of age as a young adult friendship wise than it was about, you know, a prince running a kingdom with, you know, some political turmoil, and he's trying to fix all his problems and neglecting his friend, and, you know, with Lynn, like, trying to find this cure for Miriam, and yeah. So I just wonder.
Yeah, I think if this had been classified and marketed and tweaked a little to be completely YA, I would have been like, this is a great book. I would have loved it way more. I would have enjoyed it a lot more. I think it just, you're right, it felt more of a coming-of-age story. It didn't feel like a romance. It felt like it should have been focused on the friendships between them. And it sort of felt like there was some kind of push or pressure to make it an adult book.
Well, honestly, and this might be kind of a hot take. Oh, Carrie just commented. Sorry, I didn't see this till just now because I looked over here. Carrie says, I give you ladies props. I put this in my DNF pile. I probably would have if we weren't doing it for, this book club.
I was, the first time I read it,
just after the first half.
I had to use an audiobook to get through it, because that's always kind of my thing of, well, if I can't read it, I'll try the audiobook, and if I can't do the audiobook, then, like, it's done. And maybe the narrators were just really good, but I was able to finish it, and then I went back through and reread it, but since I knew what was coming, I think it was easier to read it all.
Yeah, I think for me there was a point probably at around page 200 or 300 where I was like, oh man, like I was like, wow, I'm really not gonna finish this book in time for this live stream. because there was a time I was struggling to get through this, I think. And typically, I mean, we've talked about this before, both of us very avid readers, and I'll read a lot really fast, but it is incredibly difficult sometimes to get through these books in a timely manner when I'm putting this pressure on myself. And I started this like the 4th of July, and I didn't finish it until last weekend.
Yeah.
So
I think like I said, the one thing it's got going for it is I enjoyed at least the first 30 to 40%. So by that time, I had already been invested enough to be like, okay, I'll finish it.
Yeah.
That's a few more hours. What's another chapter? But I really think this should have just been cut in half.
And classified as YA probably
Yeah.
would have worked. But I think that there maybe was some pressure on Cassandra Clare for the adult thing, because I know that that's going super crazy on social
Yes.
media, and publishers are probably, wanting, they want the next Fourth Wing that's going to sell out
Yeah.
everywhere. They want the next, one of those books, A Court of Thorns and Roses, something that's like reads a little bit easier but still deals with adult content.
Yeah.
And I wonder
Yeah.
if there was some pressure there for her. But, I mean, I think she did a good job, and this definitely is something I will continue, like, into the second book. I just have to figure out.
Yeah, I also think sometimes I judge really harshly to begin with. But then as time goes by, I'm like, yeah, actually I had a fun time. Oh, okay, that wasn't so bad. So I think I just got to wait a few weeks before I try to read the second one. And then
I think that'll help me as well. I'm also waiting for the second one to be a paperback, because I'm a paperback truther. Hardcovers hurt my hands. So.
I have that book in a hardcover, and it is heavy.
Heavy, yeah.
Very heavy.
Is there anything else that we should get into before we wrap it up here?
Our next month book.
Yes, is Realm Breaker by Victoria Aveyard, and I don't have a calendar in front of me, but I believe the last Wednesday of the month is going to be August 27th, off the top of my head. I think
Something
it's,
like that.
it's one of those days, maybe 26th, 27th, don't exactly know. But yeah, we'll be reading that. We'll be doing something similar to this style of live stream. You'll see us there, and I'm excited for this one because I loved Red Queen.
Yes, I did too. And I think Victoria Aveyard's a great author. And she's got a really fun personality. I don't know if you've seen her on social media and
Oh my
stuff
gosh,
like
she's
that.
fun.
And I really like her opinions about publishing, the publishing industry, the book world, all of that. And when you like the author as a person, it does add to the quality of the books as well. But it's been so long since I've read Red Queen.
Oh, same. I haven't read Red Queen since middle school, maybe?
Yeah, middle school,
When
high
it
school,
came out.
something like that, which feels like forever ago. So I'm excited to get back into her stuff for sure.
I am too. And this is a series, I think. It's the first in a trilogy,
Yes.
which I'm excited about. And I believe the genre technically is fantasy, but I hear rumors of a romance subplot. Rumors of
Very
a romance
faint.
subplot.
On the
Very
wind,
faint.
rumors.
And is this technically classified as YA or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Just wanted to confirm that before I said it. But yeah, I kind of had a feeling it was, because she does such a great job in that genre, especially with the fantasy stuff. But I guess that is going to be all we have time for today. If you guys have anything you want to share with us in the comments, please feel free to. I'll be taking a look at that throughout the rest of this week. So let us know if you have any thoughts about Swordcatcher or Realmbreaker, and we'll see you right back here next month.